Hi, my name is Stephanie Merson, and this is my data collection presentation for ACTE 699, and my presentation is all about checklists. Most of us have used checklists in our classroom or in our personal lives in some way. I decided to look up the definition in the dictionary. Now, Webster defines checklist as a list of things to be checked or done. So in action research, checklists are a pretty simple way to collect data. The researcher prepares a list of items that they want to observe or to not observe, and then the researcher checks off yes or no. The researcher-prepared items may be a list of behaviors, like a student sitting in their seat during a lesson. It could be characteristics like participation. It could be skills, such as math facts. Checklists are unique in that they are very quick and a very basic way to collect data. They are something that we are already familiar with, so using them in our classrooms may feel more comfortable to us. They may take time to set up, but it doesn't take a lot of time to actually record the data while you're teaching. Checklists are versatile and can be used in many different subjects across all grade levels. So I decided to include a few examples. My first example is a checklist from a practical guide to action research for literacy educators. This checklist was created to measure student participation in discussion groups. As you can see on this checklist, the researcher is going to write the student's name down, and then they are simply going to check yes or no if the student did any of those 6 things. My second checklist is from Action Research, Improving Schools and Empowering Educators by Mertler. This checklist can be used during independent reading time to measure focus and understanding of the text. So you can see in this one, you simply write the student name at the top, and then you're checking whether you observed or didn't observe any of those things while the student is reading independently. The third checklist I found is from Teachers Pay Teachers, and it measures whether the students are meeting math standards or not. You can see this has a place for the student name, and then it has all of the math standards that you may be looking for during problem solving. And you would simply check yes or no if a student met that specific standard. The fourth checklist is also from Teachers Pay Teachers, and it measures student behavior during a specific time of day. As you can see, this checklist is a little bit different in that it is based off of every 15-minute periods, and then you have a smiley face or an X. So the smiley face would be yes, and then the X would be no. Mills defines qualitative as experience-based data collection techniques and quantitative as numbers-based data collection techniques. Since a checklist is checking yes or no, or observed or not observed, and then counting the total amounts or trying to get to a specific number of yeses, checklists would be considered a quantitative data collection method. Checklists work best with research questions looking for numerical answers, since it is a form of quantitative data collection. Some examples of questions that could use checklists as a form of data collection would be, does an intervention cause students to participate more? Another example would be, does an intervention that I'm using in my classroom cause students to do more homework? And lastly, does an intervention that I'm trying out in my classroom help students to stay on task during a read lesson? So with any of those examples, you could simply use a checklist to see whether your students were doing those things or not doing those things. Some strengths of a checklist in action research is that they are versatile. They can be used for any subject in any grade, and they can also include behavior. Since they are so versatile, any teacher can use them. And while it wouldn't take a teacher a huge amount of time to create them, there is a lot of checklists already created and that can easily be found on the internet. When looking at a large research population, using checklists can be helpful. For example, if you wanted to see if an intervention was causing more 6th grade students to participate in a math discussion, you could give the checklist to every 6th grade teacher in your school. Since it is a quick way to record data, every teacher could easily check yes or no if their students did or did not participate. The researcher could easily pull the data together. They are also easy to read and understand because all the researcher is doing is checking yes or no. As for the weaknesses of checklists, and while they are simple and easy to use, they are not as detailed as some other data collection techniques. They are also very specific, which, if your research plan changed over time, you'd have to redo your checklists. Lastly, they can be time-consuming when it comes to creating your own checklists, but as I said before, there's a lot of already pre-made checklists that you can find on the internet. Like every other form of data collection, checklists aren't perfect. Teacher bias can affect the validity of the data. If a teacher has a negative or positive bias towards a student, group of students, or an entire class, they may check yes or no more often, which in turn could call the validity of the data into question. Depending on the class and subjects, checklists can be unreliable at times. because it may be hard for a teacher or researcher to stop what they're doing to even check yes or no. Also, they may just forget to use a checklist in different parts of their lesson, causing the reliability of the data to be skewed. Lastly, it's important for data to be trustworthy, and checklists are a very specific, very basic form of data collection. So for data from checklists to be trustworthy, they should be used in conjunction with other data collection techniques, and triangulation should be used to prove the study's trustworthiness. And here are all my references. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a good night.